guys, it's Barb with Inspire Me 360, and in this particular episode I want to talk about the separation. So this is the experience that all souls go through when they are incarnating here on planet Earth. So essentially what I mean by the separation is the experience of being in a container or a body feels very separate. It feels very isolating to our soul. And again, this is an experience that all life goes through, but specifically the human being. We have, through the mechanism of being in a living body, we are on so many levels and layers disconnected from source. So it is in this very isolated state, this very painful, very visceral, separated state, that we come to know this almost craving for oneness. And it precipitates this search that, or rather a calling or a seeking, to return to that oneness of source. And we are essentially, in terms of our incarnation, in terms of the information that we are gathering for creation and for the quantum field, on that forefront of all creation in being a human being. And there's a few reasons for this. First of all, we have free will. So that being, that in and of itself is the ability to utilize our consciousness in whatever way we do, or whatever way it goes. And that can be quite a scary proposition in terms of creational law and in terms of the law of the universe. This is why Earth is so protected, so to speak, and why there are certain mechanisms in place here so that our creational power doesn't get out of hand. So we can even see this in terms of wars, destruction, the advancement of weaponry, nuclear weapons. Human beings have the ability, unlike any other life form. So when you look at the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, the mineral kingdoms, none of these aspects of organic life or incarnate life take the sort of darker path that human beings do. And so we've been given this extremely powerful consciousness, and then we've been given the ability to utilize basically in its full effect free will. And that can be a wonderful thing in terms of learning about the energy of creation. So the main operant energy of all creation is unconditional love. It is the light and love energy. And when we understand this, we can understand our journey here to Earth and what it is that we are actually doing in sort of the mundane daily tasks and what it is all accumulating towards. And once we see it through this lens, it actually makes a lot more sense, and it has this sort of calming effect as we move through our conscious state towards the illumination or the ascension process. And so if we can think of the body as a learning tool, so this is a tool that we've been given. Our soul is residing in this three-dimensional vehicle, this body, and we have decided to utilize the body as a mechanism of separation from that which we call spirit, or that which we call God, the oneness of everything. And when this separation happens, or the descent into the lower chambers of consciousness, if you will, we will undoubtedly have these separation pains, or this craving always to return to the oneness that created everything that we see, that is the universe. And that's also where the pain comes from. So the pain and suffering that we experience, the isolation, so that very mechanism of one's isolation is the catalyst for extreme learning and extreme growth through the lens of its opposite. So because we are moving away from oneness, because we are in this separation state, we have a longing, a deep internal longing to return to our source, essentially. And when we are in a state of unawareness, or sort of a sleep-like state, unawakened, we will perceive this separation as a very personal thing. So we will, again, until we really understand the expanded state of our soul, and that we have a soul, and when we start to identify with these concepts, when we're looking at the journey of life and the journey of incarnation through a three-dimensional lens, it will become very, very distorted, and also can feel very ungrounding, because we don't have any essential knowingness to tether it to. And again, that's usually what precipitates the seeking. When we don't understand who we are, why we were created, what our purpose is, and if we start to deconstruct it, we get to a certain point, especially, if we look at it through the lens of atheism, okay, where we would believe that, there is no spirit or source, and everything is just a universal accident, essentially. And life has no meaning, and it really doesn't definitively matter what you do or what you don't do, that there are no consequences. And this is one way of looking, or one lens we can basically break the experience of living through, or break it down through. And we can do that for a certain amount of time, but then it becomes quite evident that there's still this kind of gnawing force within us that continually desires to return to a connective state. And we experience this connected state, or this connective state, through our emotional body when we are living as the human being. And this emotional body is that cord that essentially pulls us, or magnetizes us, toward the other, or the others. And you will feel this in everyday life, in all things, whether it is the bond between parent and child, friendship bonds, relationship bonds. As human beings, we desire to have interconnection. And this desire for interconnection is fundamental to our need to not be isolated, our need to not be in separation. And the more that we, especially if we look at the various possibilities for what a life or an incarnation could mean, or again, through an atheist view where it has really no meaning, and then one would essentially turn back into dust, and have no recollection of the memories, and no recollection of a lifetime. There's just too many anomalies, and there's too many parts of, whether it be science or religious teachings, synchronicities, that circle us back to this knowingness that there is something more to an incarnation. And so then once we accept that there is more to this life than just living it, something behind all of creation, which is spirit, which is our source, then we start to journey upon this quest for that return home. And it becomes, again, increasingly clear to the soul that has decided to make this journey homeward, that as we put into practice all of the laws of creation, the laws of manifestation, all of the esoteric teachings that have been handed down through generations of human beings, that when we follow in line with these different sets of standards, we start to perceive our external reality and our internal reality with a greater convergence of oneness principle. And as we move into a greater connectiveness and a greater embodiment of this unification, the pieces of what we are start to kind of be put back together. That brokenness that we feel when we're in this total and very, very painful isolation state start to fall away as we begin the unification process, as we start to see ourselves through the perspective lens of oneness. So we are one with everything else that is around us. A sort of peacefulness and calmness starts to become our pervading state. And we'll find that not only is our day-to-day consciousness calibrated at an equilibrium that feels more peaceful and loving, our emotional body will start to synchronize itself, and again, we won't become triggered by that primal animalistic mind, which again very acutely represents the separation. And as we go through this ascension process into the higher and higher states, as we start to move into this ascended conscious state, we actually start to embody more of the light and the love energy that is out there for us in the universe. And part of this journey is, again, a beautiful unconditional loving energy that will just become us. But until we start to ascend the ladder of consciousness, and until we really forcibly cause ourselves to make this journey, it is a very uncomfortable, in many ways, incarnation. And so there's multiple states, but there's 3 states I want to highlight in this. So the first is the state of total unawareness. So when you are essentially completely asleep, so you haven't even questioned your own mortality, you are just a consciousness experiencing existence. This state tends to happen more so in our early childhood years of our incarnation. It's, again, before we realize that we have come here to die. And that is a beautiful, blissful, childlike state. It is probably the most creative state and innocent state that we will exist in an incarnation. Okay, and it's purposeful. We go through this very blissful, childlike state to experience the beingness of it. And then once within the free will system, once we have started to realize that within a lifetime there is a perceived ending to us, so that within an incarnation we are going to die. And through, again, the other teaching tool that is in place here on planet Earth, that aspect of spiritual amnesia makes it so that the lessons that we learn here are very, very deeply felt at the soul level. This is essentially the arena or the classroom where the blueprint of our soul can actually be changed. And the reason that this is because we actually learn our lessons here on planet Earth completely separated from our source. So we are so separate from the force of creation that as we are choosing, so as we are using, again, the karmic system and choosing our deliberate path through this avatar body, through the mechanism of this matrix kind of construct, each and every soul is in essence becoming its own creator, its own operant of the manifesting reality. Now, within the system, we do have the collective. So we are collectively connected through this field. We refer to it as the quantum field. But it's very interesting from a student perspective how much true catalyst there is here in terms of what is available for really stretching the parameters of a soul's ability to learn in a very, very, dense and small amount of time, even though time really doesn't exist. And why I'm making this video is to help you to understand that it is very natural to feel disconnected, and it's very natural to have a very painful experience with this disconnection. This is part of the process. This is part of that very deep learning that your soul is going through. And again, it's kind of like that wild card energy. So planet Earth is essentially that wild card planet where consciousness can grow in any direction without too much of what has come before in creation. Obviously, there are universal laws. Obviously, there are things that keep the universe in balance, which, again, is a beautiful reality and a constant truth. And this knowingness that creation and its force and what propels it is unconditional love, and that love is the most powerful force in the universe. Once we acclimate ourselves towards that, and once we understand that, we really are essentially on the journey home. We start to, in essence, remember our soul, our true nature, the blueprint of what we are. And as this happens, as we go through the ascension process, we want nothing more than to return to oneness. And then we start to realize that everything that is outside of this very isolating body vehicle is us. It is a mirror to what is inside of us, and obviously a mirror of the collective. So in terms of the solo journey, we can't take full responsibility for absolutely everything that is in the external world. But what we can do is we can know that it is the totality of the human consciousness. So, and there is pain in that as well. When you are on a very high vibrational path, and once you have started to reacclimate towards that source energy in a very powerful way, it becomes increasingly painful to see the distortion that the human consciousness can create. And you essentially do whatever you can to move away from the distortion and correct the distortion, especially within yourself. And you start to realize that, again, with everything that is very painful, whether it be violence, war, greed, everything that's out there, you understand it as a cycle of learning, and you move away from it, and you allow your own peace to pervade all other things, knowing that, again, with the levels of consciousness and creation, that you will be ascending to that level where eventually you will no longer perceive any of that lower vibrational energy. And that's the journey home. And that's really what every great has taught from, all of recorded history, is that journey home, that perceptive ability for us to detach from any distortion and to single out our soul's consciousness from that which is being distorted. And I'm going to wrap this video up. Essentially, the piece that I want to give in making this is that you are not incorrect in feeling extreme amounts of suffering and an extreme amount of, I think, craving would be the best word, of a return to oneness. And we get it in little pieces. So we get it in connection with others, and we will have these beautiful moments of unconditional love. And then we're once again reminded that we are separate. And this is painful. This is the journey. This is what we all signed up for. And it is the catalyst for the deepest levels of learning. The descent into darkness is the way that we become able to perceive the light in such a more beautiful and awe-inspiring way, because we have seen it from its opposite. So enjoy the rest of your day. Try to find peace in all of the things that you do, and I will see you in the next video.